Hello, I am Dr. Molly Waring. I am an associate professor in the Department of Allied Health Sciences at UConn and the director of the Methodology Core for the UConn Center for mHealth and Social Media. Today, I am here to talk to you guys about using Rtweet and NCapture to gather Twitter data. So I gave a webinar last year that provided an overview of methods for capturing and examining social media data for health research. I've included here at the bottom a link to the YouTube video of that webinar if you're interested. In that webinar, I talked about sort of 4 ways that we often use social media for health research. And that talk was broader than just Twitter, but social media in general. So thinking about recruiting for trials or observational studies, using social media to deliver behavioral interventions, to evaluate social media delivered interventions, and to conduct observational studies of social media content. If you're interested in either of the top 2 here, so recruitment or intervention delivery, we have webinars on those topics that go into much more depth in those topics. There's a link here at the bottom to those webinars. Today, really want to talk about the practical aspects, the nuts and bolts of getting data for these last 2 ways of using social media. So to evaluate a social media delivered intervention or to conduct an observational study of social media content. And again, today we are focusing on Twitter data, and I'm going to be talking about 2 tools for gathering Twitter data for these purposes. So today I want to talk briefly about the considerations in thinking about collecting and using Twitter data. So methodologic, ethical, and practical considerations. And then I'm going to put the slides away and pull up the tools and walk you through how to use these 2 tools to collect Twitter data. So walking through an example of how to use NCapture to collect Twitter data, and then using Rtweet to collect Twitter data. So first, thinking about some methodologic concerns or considerations is that, I really want to drive home the point that data collection and analysis should stem from a research question. It is very easy when you have tools to gather all sorts of very cool data from Twitter. The tendency is to be like, ooh, data. And I, as an epidemiologist, I love data, and sometimes I get very excited about what we can collect. So it's really important to back up and think, not just what data can I collect, but really, what do we know about a particular topic? Where are the gaps in the research? And what is the research question that we really want to answer to move a field forward? And then from there, what are the data that we need to collect? And then what are the analyses we need to do to answer that research question? So thinking about, the tools I'm going to be talking about today, they're really just a tool, again, to help you collect data to answer a research question. So always going back to what is the research question? What are you really trying to add to a field? I also think a really important methodologic consideration for doing research using Twitter data and other social media data is that you really want to have an interdisciplinary team that includes subject matter expertise and also data science and analytic expertise. So thinking about knowing what data to collect from Twitter, that really takes a knowledge of a topic and including knowledge of search terms or hashtags or jargon or slang used by the target population to talk about what you're interested in. So an example here of some work that I've collaborated on is around indoor tanning. So indoor tanning is typically a term that academics and researchers use to describe the behavior, whereas individuals who are engaging in indoor tanning, don't tweet saying, "Oh, I'm about to engage in indoor tanning today." They might more likely to say, "Wow, I can't wait to go to the tanning salon again," or "Man, I had a really great session in the tanning bed today." So in our work where we've done content analyses of what people are talking about around indoor tanning, we've used search terms of tanning bed or tanning salon because it gets at how people are talking about that behavior rather than the more scientific term of indoor tanning. So really making sure that that someone on your team not only understands what are the terms, the terms and the jargon that people are using, but that the terms and jargon people are using on Twitter to talk about the behavior or the topic that you're interested in. On the other side of it, a lot of these data take a fair amount of data management required to turn the raw Twitter data into information. It's very easy, as you'll see later today, very easy to get your hands on a lot of Twitter data, but we want to be able to turn those raw data into insightful answers to our research questions. And that does take some amount of data management and then analyses. And you want to make sure you have people on your team who feel comfortable doing those steps. Another methodologic concern or consideration here is thinking about sampling. So when you're thinking about collecting Twitter data to answer a research question, you want to think about, when do you want to collect those data? So thinking about prospective versus retrospective data collection. So the 2 tools that I talk about today, depending on how you're collecting data, whether you're collecting, from a particular person's stream or from a particular person's set of tweets versus using a hashtag or a search term, sometimes they only go back 7 days. So you can pay third-party companies or pay to have a greater access to the Twitter API to collect data further back. But if you're interested in using these freely accessible, easy tools to use, you may not be able to go very far back. So thinking about, when do you need to collect these data? Can you set up a prospective sampling strategy? So we've done this in a couple of studies where we used, for instance, collected data on a particular hashtag or search term every single day for a week or two. You could also go over a long period of time, or you could do a pre or post design around an event by specifically collecting tweets before something and then after something. Another thing to think about is seasonality. So, are you investigating a behavior or a phenomenon that has different seasonal interest or different conversations throughout the year? So there's been some, very interesting work showing there's a sort of a spike in interest in weight loss around New Year's. Lots of people make New Year's resolutions about wanting to lose weight. So is that something that you want to particularly include or not include in your sampling? Similarly, thinking about day of the week. So is this something that is a behavior or a topic that will be different, and the conversation will be different on weekends versus weekdays? And do you want to purposely include or exclude certain days of the week from data collection, or make sure that you have a representation of certain days of the week or certain months in your sampling? A last thing is, are there popular events such as holidays or just sort of events, say a political event or an election or something that you particularly want to make sure to include or not include in your sampling? So thinking about those things in advance. There's because it's easy to collect these data, relatively easy to collect a bunch of data, sometimes people are like, oh, I'll just go grab the data. But I really encourage you to be thoughtful about when you collect the data and how you collect the data. Additionally, a note sort of about interpretation and generalizability of data from Twitter. So not everyone uses Twitter. Some of the more recent numbers is roughly a quarter of US adults use Twitter. So it's not everybody. And not everyone uses Twitter in the same way or to talk about behavior. So if you're thinking about a topic or a behavior, not everyone who engages in that behavior tweets about it. So for example, not everyone who vapes tweets about vaping. Not everyone who engages in indoor tanning talks about indoor tanning on Twitter. So you want to think about what proportion of your population of interest uses Twitter, and then how do they use Twitter, particularly as it relates to your study aims. To think, is Twitter a good way to get at conversations or attitudes or reports of behavior about this, and who are we including and not including in our sample based on who is talking about that topic on Twitter. We also have some ethical considerations to think about these data. So I want to say I firmly believe that we have an ethical obligation to protect the people who contribute research data, regardless of whether those people are considered human subjects. If you're doing an observational study of public tweets and you are only including public tweets and you're not interacting with any people, many IRBs do not consider this to be human subjects research. I would encourage you always to check with your IRB about what types of studies they consider human subjects research and require review versus not. But many times we can do analysis of public tweets without it being technically human subjects research. However, we still have people who are contributing data that we are using. And because these are public tweets, we want to think about, how are we using these tweets and reporting these tweets in a way that could potentially cause harm to the people who created the content, who are providing the information in our studies. So for instance, there is some, this is still a topic for conversation among social media researchers, but I personally don't include long direct quotes of public tweets in publications because they are searchable, and so you could take a quote, a quoted tweet in a paper and go find the person who said that. And so there's this, this conflict between, tweets that are posted publicly are public, and people in theory know that they're tweeting publicly, but there's a difference between knowing that you're tweeting something publicly and expecting it to be used in research. And so thinking about, is there a way that if I call somebody out for engaging in a behavior that I'm labeling as a risky behavior and publishing a paper saying this person is engaging in this risky behavior, is that something that could be potentially harmful for people? In the context where you're collecting Twitter data to evaluate a Twitter-delivered behavioral intervention, so either an intervention where you've created a private network or that you're influencing people's behavior, you're intervening on people, they will, of course, be human subjects research and be consented into your study. I would definitely recommend that if you are collecting engagement data, say on a behavioral intervention via Twitter, with people who have consented to be in the study, that you include details in your consent form and in your consent conversation, your discussion, about what data you will be collecting from them and what data you won't be collecting from them and how you will use that data. So the Connected and Open Research Ethics Group, CORE, has sample consent forms, and I've linked to that here. So if you're interested in knowing what type of language to use, feel free to use those examples or reach out to us at the center and we can give you additional examples. And finally, something to just sort of think about depending on the design of your study. So whether it's the context of evaluating engagement in a behavioral intervention that you've delivered to people that have been consented in your study on a private network on Twitter versus doing a secondary analysis or content analysis of public tweets. You want to think through in advance how you might handle tweets that contain concerning content that makes you concerned about participant safety, or that might be a reportable disclosure or reportable types of behavior or circumstances in a research setting. So thinking about if you see posts that indicate that somebody is thinking about hurting themselves, suicidal ideation, or if somebody is disclosing elder abuse or child abuse, thinking through in advance, what might you do if you see that kind of content, and what can you do, what should you do. I've linked here at the bottom of the screen to some recent studies written, led or co-authored by center faculty. And if you have additional thoughts, or if you want to read some more about the ethical considerations of using Twitter data, I highly recommend checking out these publications. I will be posting a PDF of these slides, and so everything I've linked in here you will be able to access easily. So finally, I want to talk about some practical considerations. Thinking about NCapture versus Rtweet versus other ways of accessing Twitter data, which tool best suits your needs. So which of these tools gets you the data you need and gets your data you need in the sort of the easiest, the least painful way for you and your team. So one question might be, does someone on your team know R? So R is great, but there is a bit of a learning curve if you've never used it and you've never done other computer programming, such as Java or C++. And so, if no one on your team knows R, maybe that's not the best choice, or maybe it's a fun thing to learn. I always like learning new things. Similarly, does your team have access to NVivo? So NCapture, is most helpful if you have access to NVivo. If no one on your team has access to NVivo, that makes that a tool that is less practical for you and your team. Another point that I want to make here is that both of these tools require you to authorize the app through your Twitter account. So they both pop up and say, do you authorize this app to access your Twitter account? So the caution here is to be careful about not capturing tweets from private accounts who have accepted you as a follower if your intention is to only include public tweets in your data set. So what I have done is I've created a second Twitter account, which I don't follow anyone. It is basically just so that I know that I'm only capturing public tweets when I'm intending to only capture public tweets on a topic. And a final note here, so that second point goes back to ethics as well. So if you are saying that the things are public tweets, you don't want to accidentally be including private tweets. So finally, another practical consideration is that the Twitter's APIs, it will change. It's not an issue of if, it's an issue of when. There have been changes to the Twitter API over the last couple of years. There will continue to be changes, and be prepared to adapt. So this also ties back to the suggestion of having an interdisciplinary team and making sure that you have somebody with data analytics skills, so that when the Twitter API changes, you can pivot quickly to figuring out, okay, how do we, if there's a change that limits your ability to do what you have been intending to do, can you pivot and get the data you need in a different way? And also thinking about longer term grants, thinking about building in, a backup plan for if you have to switch to manual data abstraction, or if you have to, sort of pivot, or you have to pay a third party vendor, to sort of think in advance, do we have sort of the flexibility, in our budgets and in our teams to do whatever it takes to get the data you need to answer your research questions. So I hope those considerations don't discourage you. This is great, great fun research, and it's really fun to collect these data and do fun, great, interesting scientific things with them. But these are sort of things to think about as you're designing studies and as you're thinking of what kind of Twitter data you want and how best to capture it, so to make that process more smooth. So next I'm going to give a very brief overview of the two tools, and then I will actually pull them up and show you how they work. So the first tool I want to talk about is NCapture. It is a free browser extension for Chrome and Internet Explorer, so it's an extension to NVivo. So it's put out by QSR International. So here are the links of how you download this, this browser tool, this extension. We're going to talk today about gathering Twitter data using NCapture. You can also gather some Facebook data. And over the years, they've changed what exactly type of Facebook data you can collect. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend reading on their website what types you can collect. You can also collect YouTube content and content from web pages. So this browser extension, it downloads data and creates a file, an NCapture file, which you can then import into NVivo for analysis, or import into NVivo and then export to other statistical software to do whatever you want with it. One note here is that NCapture is not always consistent with the number of tweets it downloads or how far back tweets are captured. And sometimes that depends on changes to the Twitter API, and sometimes there's just a little inconsistency. So thinking about what tool you want to use to capture, and tying it back to what's your research question, what Twitter data you need and for what purpose, just sort of know that you don't always get a consistent number of tweets downloaded. So this is really great if you're looking for a sampling of tweets about a topic. So for instance, a sampling of the tweets with the hashtag wear a mask. You will definitely get a sample of recent tweets with that hashtag. You might not get every single tweet in the past 7 days or in the past 3 days or whatever. So thinking about that. So this is NCapture. Again, very soon I will walk you through how to use this, but this is the overview and the links of where you get this, where you get the browser extension. The second tool I'm going to walk you through and show you today is Rtweet. So it is an R package. So R is free to use. You can download it and install it on Mac or Windows or other operating systems. So I've linked to the R project, so you can download and install R. It also has a couple of packages that you need, but if you try to install Rtweet, it will tell you which packages it needs and install the dependencies while you're installing Rtweet. There is great documentation through the R project on how to use Rtweet. So I've linked to some of that here, including some examples of the different options and what you can do with it. Relevant to what we're doing here, and I think the things that will be most useful to most of you is the ability to search by keywords or hashtags to download users' timelines. So all the tweets by a particular user, to get liked tweets by a user, and then they have additional functionality. Note at this time, the keyword or hashtag searches are limited to tweets in the past 7 days. So to think about that in the context of, when you need tweets, and thinking about designing your sampling strategy around that. So that is a brief overview of these two tools. So next I am going to pull up a browser and show you how to do it. Okay, so next I want to show you how NCapture works. So here I have a web browser up. I am logged into Twitter as my account only for collecting Twitter data. So it does not follow any other accounts. So I can be sure that I'm only collecting public tweets because as I'm not following any accounts, I can't possibly be capturing any tweets by private accounts. So here I have already installed the NCapture add-on. So you can see this little button right here that represents NCapture, and we'll use that in a second. So when you're thinking about collecting tweets using NCapture, the most common way to do that is either through searching for a search term or for a hashtag. You search for them the same way in the search bar. For a hashtag, you just do hashtag and then the hashtag. To search for search terms, if you just include a list of words, it will include tweets that have any or all of those words. Whereas if you want a particular phrase, put the phrase in quotes. So in the example that I talked about before, when we were interested in indoor tanning, when we wanted tweets about tanning beds or tanning salons, we would put the phrase tanning bed in quotes so that we made sure that people are talking about tanning and bed together as a tanning bed. So here, for the example today, I am going to use a hashtag related to the great work that's being done at UConn called the UConn Impact. Again, when you're thinking about your search terms or your hashtags, again, think about your research question. What is your research question? What data do you need? And then develop a search strategy of the search terms or the hashtags that will get you at the conversations that are occurring on Twitter that will help you answer your research question. Here, because I'm using this to demonstrate, how a tool works, how NCapture works, I have picked a hashtag, and I've picked a hashtag where this is likely to be tweets where people are celebrating the great work that's done at UConn, and that no one is going to be, upset if, in perpetuity, this webinar video, people can see people's private tweets. These shouldn't be people's private tweets or things that they want to keep more private. So you'll notice when you search for something on Twitter, it defaults to top tweets. So here are some of the more popular tweets. I like to select latest tweets, because what I'm interested in is usually a sampling of a conversation around a particular topic. And so I don't necessarily want only the most popular tweets in my data set. I really want a sampling of what is the conversation like. So some tweets that got no engagement and didn't go anywhere, and other tweets that were very popular. So I click latest here. So once you have, searched, look through this, I would also recommend, as you're trying out different hashtag or different search terms, sort of scroll through the feed that you get and see, are those the kind of tweets that you're looking for? Are you seeing a lot of, of junk, a lot of ineligible tweets that are not what you're interested in to answer your research question, and help refine your search strategy before you actually download the data. But assuming that, we're interested in this hashtag UConn impact, we're looking here at the listing of latest tweets from it. And then we go up to here and we click the NCapture button. So it will ask you whether you want to capture tweets as a data set or as a web page, or the web page as a PDF. Now here, if you want to analyze the data, I would highly recommend tweets as a data set. That's what we're doing here. So note here, it enables you to change the name of the file that it's going to save. So sometimes if I'm going to be doing the same search over multiple days, so if I have a search strategy that involves prospective data collection, I would add here, possibly add here, the date of the search or something like that. So we have tweets as data set selected. Notice here there is a link here saying show capture progress page. We do want to go there, but first we're going to start the capture. So we hit capture. It will first ask you, do you authorize NVivo and NCapture to access your account? And if you want to collect data, you say yes. So then it takes a few minutes, and then it starts capturing data. So then when we click this button again, it will show us you can go to the capture page. So here, it will show you the search that you did and then the number of tweets captured. So here, it seems like in the last 7 days, we've had, only nine tweets. This will give you some number of tweets. I've collected, with certain searchers, I've had thousands of tweets. Some have very few. You'll notice here at the bottom of the page in Chrome, it shows you right away, that you have downloaded an NVCX file, an NVivo capture file. So that's it. Congratulations, you've now collected Twitter data. So I want to show you one other way that you can search and capture Twitter data, and then I will pull up NVivo and show you how to show you what to do with those files next. So another way you can use NCapture is to, instead of searching for tweets using a particular hashtag or a particular search phrase, is to collect tweets posted by a particular user. So here I am now going to search for at UConn mHealth. So our center's account. So here is our center's account. And you can collect tweets posted by a particular account. So again, I've selected this account. Because these are all public tweets, and we want you to disseminate and show these tweets around because we want to disseminate our work. So if you're interested, how this may be useful is particularly if you're evaluating a social media delivered intervention. So an intervention you've done via Twitter, either a public health campaign or a more of a privately delivered, like a group delivered behavioral intervention by creating a private network, by having people create accounts to use in the study, set them private, all follow each other. You may want to be able to collect tweets posted by either your interventionist or your health messaging account, or by participants in the study, in which case going to a particular user's page and collecting all the tweets that they have posted, would help you get engagement data to evaluate an intervention. So in this case, just showing you how it works, I've gone to our center account. While you're capturing tweets from a particular account, you can either capture tweets or tweets and replies. I like the tweets and replies because I want to know everything that they said, all the tweets that they did, not just their original tweets. I like the replies as well. And especially in the context of an intervention where you want people to be talking to each other, you want their replies so that you get those conversations as well. So making sure that you have tweets and replies selected, then you go back up to the little capture button. Here you have a couple of options. So again, you could collect it as a PDF, which might be useful, particularly for qualitative analysis within in vivo. I'm most interested in tweets as a data set. So you have two options here. One is tweets as a data set, including retweets, and one tweets as a data set, excluding retweets. So I typically include the retweets. I like data. I would always rather, toss data or exclude data from an analysis later than not capture it and wish I had it later. So I almost always go for tweets as a data set, including retweets. But again, depending on your research question and what you want with the data, you might want to exclude them. Again, here it defaults to a particular file name. You could, you can rename it here. So then you, again, click capture here. And then if you go to the capture page, it is working on it. So you can see here, there are a lot more tweets available. And so it is gonna, hum along for a little while and collect us some tweets. Okay, and then you can tell it's done with a little status is a check. And we can see down here at the bottom of the screen that it saved the file to the downloads. So that is how you use NCapture to capture the tweets. And next, I will show you how to pull these NCapture files into in vivo and then do something with them. Okay, so the next step after you have captured Twitter data using NCapture is to import it into in vivo. So here I have just opened in vivo 12. You want to start with a blank project. And you want to give it some sort of useful name. So I'm going to call it Center Tweets. I know, not that clever. I would suggest better naming with your actual projects. I'm going to store mine in a folder that I have that I've set up for this. But obviously, you store it where it makes sense for you. So now we are opening a blank. So here is the blank in vivo project. I don't need instructions on this, so I'll close that out. So here we have the blank project. So the next thing we want to do is we want to import data. So we go up to the import tab, and then here we want to import and capture data. So it then will show you the NCaptures that you have available. So here it defaults to the downloads folder. So if that's where you've downloaded them, I would recommend once you've downloaded NCapture files that you move them to a project folder and then navigate over to that project folder and open them from there. For this example, I've just left them in my downloads. So right now it lists all NCapture files in that folder. You can see here we had captured the hashtag Yukon Impact and then tweets with replies from the center account. Right now it defaults to opening up all of the files. I typically don't open up all of the files at once. You could certainly run several searches and then open up multiple files at once. I typically just open them one at a time. So you want to unselect all of them and then purposely select the ones that you do want to capture. Here there's an option at the bottom if you are adding to a project or if you are importing multiple files at once, you can merge matching social media data sets, including previously imported. I prefer to just, basically take each NCapture file, and create a data set from that and then look at those data and then, drop duplicate tweets. If I'm collecting prospectively or something, to drop those duplicate tweets in SAS, which is, my preferred language, you could also just have in vivo do that for you. So here I have selected just the NCapture file that I want to capture, and then I say import. And it thinks for a minute, and then boom, now it's in the data set. So here now it is in vivo as a file. So you can open it and take a look at what it looks like. So this is what the data look like. So you have an ID number, you have a tweet ID, you have the username of the person who posted it, you have the tweet text, the time it was posted, whether it was a retweet or a tweet, who it was retweeted by, people who were mentioned in it, hashtags that were included in it, the name of the account, location, the biography of the posting account, and then the number of tweets, number of followers, and number of following of the tweeting account, and then for some accounts, location coordinates. So it depends on whether that account has location coordinates set up. So you can see the kind of data that this has. So within in vivo, it's now in vivo. So if you want to, depending on, again, what your research question is, if you want to analyze the data right in vivo, so if you want to do a content analysis or some other qualitative exploration right in vivo, you are all set. Your data are now in the system. Let's save. always important to save. So now that it is saved, now it is in vivo. You have an in vivo data set with your data in it. You could go nuts just right here in this program. You could also decide that you want to export the tweets from in vivo to some other statistical analysis software. So I usually export it for import into SAS because I prefer SAS, although I also use Stata and R on occasion as well. So how to export tweets or your tweet data set is you select the file here, and then you can go up to share, and then you can go to export here. And then it will give you the name of the file. So we might want to browse and put it somewhere in particular. So where are we? You guys can see all my files. So we go to webinar, and then this is a perfectly good name for this one. You can also ask it to include sort of properties of the file or other options on this. I'm just going to hit OK so that it exports it. So it thought about it for a minute, and then I will pull up this folder. So this folder, we now have this in vivo data set. We then have this Excel file. So if you want to look at the Excel file, it shows you all the same information, but now it's in Excel. So again, here, sort of the row number, the observation number, the tweet ID, the username of the person who tweeted it, the tweet text, the date and time of posting, and so on. So all this data is now in here. And from here, you can import this into, again, whatever your favorite favorite software package is. And again, it depends on the research question, what you want to, what your research question is, what analyses are appropriate, whether you're doing a content analysis or natural language processing, or other text processing, a sentiment analysis, whatever you're doing. With the thing, maybe simply summing up saying, here's an account where we posted a bunch of public health messages, which ones had the greatest number of retweets or greatest number of likes, etc. So that is the basics of how you go from NCapture to getting an NCapture file, to bringing it into in vivo, and then to exporting it for import into whatever your favorite program is. Also, while I'm in vivo, I wanted to show you a couple of other options. So if you go over to home, you can auto code. So this can be useful, if you want to do coding, qualitative coding right in vivo. It will code things into nodes based on predefined Twitter columns. So here you can code it node or cases for hashtag, it will create nodes for hashtags, or it'll create nodes for users mentioned in it, or other things like that, or tweet type. So again, depending on your analysis, this can be a useful thing to play around with as well. So that is, that's how you get the NCapture files into in vivo, and then out of in vivo if you want to use a different software to use it. Okay, so we have just walked through an example of how you use NCapture to collect Twitter data. So now I want to talk about using Rtweet. So here I have R open, and I have pulled up a script that I've written for the purposes of demonstrating how to use Rtweet. So here I always suggest with any statistical code to start with a sort of a header comment with the purpose of the program and the code contributors. Note here I've also added a little comment at the top that before running the script you want to log into Twitter using the account that you want to use to capture the tweets. Again, similar to NCapture, Rtweet requires an account that authorizes through the account to download tweets. So the first thing that you want to do in the script is to load the Rtweet and then the Rtweet package. And here I'm also loading the OpenXLSX package, which allows us to write data to an Excel file. You can use this, or you can use others. Or if you want to do all the analyses in R, then you don't need to write it to Excel at all. You just use your R data set. So the first thing we do is that we load the packages. Next here is that I set a path to where to save output files. I like to do this right at the top of the file, so it's easier to, if I want to reuse this script for another project, it's easier to, in one place, save it to a different project folder, and then it makes the code sort of a little simpler before. So next, then we get to the actual part of the script that actually collects the data. So here first, we can use the search tweets function of this package to collect tweets based on search terms or hashtags. So here I have used another Yukon-related hashtag called the Yukon Nation. And here I have said, okay, let's search for tweets that include that hashtag. Give me 1,000 tweets. I would like recent tweets versus top tweets, similar to what we talked about in NCapture. Here we have a language option. So it's kind of handy that you can restrict the results to only tweets that are in a certain language. So here I'm asking for English language tweets. And then you have the option of including retweets versus not, so either true or false. Here for this example, I have said let's not include retweets. So let me run that bit of code and then show you what it looks like. So I will run that code. And then we can hop over here. So right now it is going to pop up and it is going to ask me to authorize our tweets. So it says authentication complete. Please close this page and return to R. So okay. And now it is working on collecting my data for me. So we will sit and hang out for it to do that. So it looks like it has now collected data. So note that I had asked for 1,000 tweets. There may not be 1,000 tweets. Then we can go back up to our code. And I have provided coding here to sort of explore the data, to look at the number of tweets, and then to show the date, user, and tweet text for the first 10 tweets. So we can run that as well and then go over to here. So here it said that it captured 59 tweets. And that here are some of the most recent tweets. So here is a tweet from today. Somebody obviously included the hashtag #UconNation because that's what that is what we are capturing. And then it has the rest of the tweets. It cuts it off here. The full tweet text is in the data set. It just doesn't show it on the screen. So here we now have a collection of tweets using including the hashtag #UconNation. So we can now do things with it. So you can either, at this point, like you now have the data in R. So you can either save it as an R data set, and again, if you're using R, go nuts with whatever analyses or coding that you wanted to do to answer your research question. You can also, at this point, export the data set to Excel to import into any other statistical analysis software you want. So here, this line of code takes this data set called my tweets. It saves it to my path, which we stepped before, so that folder, and then I've called this file tweets_UconNation, and append equals false means overwrite that file. Don't just keep adding to that file. So I will show you what happens if we run this code. So it says, great, it did it. And then if we bop over to the webinar folder, we now have this file called tweets@UconNation, and we can pull it up and look at what the tweets look like here. So here we have a user ID, the tweet ID, you have when the tweet occurred, the person's screen name, the text of the tweet, the source of the tweet. So this was from a Twitter web app. Down here, somebody tweeted from their iPhone. The length, the length of the text, who it's in reply to, whether it's a quote or whether it's a retweet, how many times it was the favorite count, so how many times it was liked, and then hashtags and URLs of any pictures, etc. And then here, we have additional information about whether people were retweeting it with quotes. Or not, or things like that, and then it just sort of keeps going. Many things here you can dig into whether or not they're useful to you, and then here also information on the tweeting account. So this is the name of the tweeting account, and then the information, the followers and following, etc. of the account. So lots of data here. There are also a lot of variables that are captured by Rtweet that for many of you will not be at all useful. Try not to feel overwhelmed by the information you don't need, and again, focus on the data that you do need. So this is now, in Excel, you can, delete the columns that you will never need from this before importing into your statistical analysis software of choice, or you can just use it in R. So the next thing that I want to talk about, or I want to show you, is that you can use Rtweet to capture data in different ways. So that was, again, searching by a search term or hashtag. You can also collect tweets by a specific user. So it's using the get timelines option here. And so here, this code is saving the data called my user. We're getting the timeline of Dr. Molly Waring, which is me, and saying I want the last 500 tweets. Similarly, you can sort of take a look at what the data looks like. You can then save this data in the same way as I did above to Excel to import into whatever. You can also, one thing that's handy is that you can also get likes data, so data on tweets that a particular account has liked. So here you can use the get favorites function. And here I've asked it to get the tweets that UConn InShip has liked. And so the last 3,000 up to 3,000 tweets. You can also, in this case, get favorites from multiple accounts. So here you can say get favorites from me or the center account or InShip. And this function is handy thinking about if you have a behavioral intervention that you've delivered via Twitter, say in a little private network that you've created by having people create private accounts and just follow each other to create a little private network. You may want to say, okay, I want to know which of the intervention tweets all of the participants in the study have liked. And so this would be a way to get those data. So similarly, once you have the data in R through, by capturing it and creating it in R, you can, look at the data and do thousands of other things to it. But at the very minimum, look at the data, make sure it's what you want, and then you can export it to Excel. So I am happy to share this, very basic script with anyone who wants to. And again, this is, sort of a first pass. There are many options to, the search tweets function, the get timelines, the get favorites, additional Rtweets functions. I would highly recommend checking out the documentation and doing a little bit of exploring to see, which of those options, really gets the data that you're looking for. Again, the data you're looking for to answer the research question you're interested in. Okay, so that is a brief introduction to using the free tools NCapture and Rtweet to collect Twitter data for health research. I hope you found this webinar useful, and I wish you the best of luck in collecting just exactly the right Twitter data that you need to answer your research questions and advancing our understanding of the world and our ability to promote health of folks here in the US and across the world. Good luck.